children who want something from their parents often become very creative in how they can convince the parents to do whatever it is that they want to do, whether it's a place they want to go or something they want to eat or have. So if we're a little bit weaker, which makes us feel we have to, especially if we felt strong. And Israel's a prime example of this because, Israel has the country of Israel, Zionists in particular, it's a very powerful mentality. We are the best. There's a kind of racism there that says we're better and we're the best. And that's not uncommon. Many groups feel that they're better than other groups, but they have been massively armed and armed themselves massively. And they've been, in many ways, explosively successful, at least to their own people, and how they conduct wars. Now, we can talk about how they are actually losing the war that they have currently conducted on 5 fronts. They have actually lost that war already, and they don't realize it. But for a popular interpretation domestically, we're powerful because we have airplanes that can go bomb any place. We're powerful because we can assassinate leaders in every capital city that we choose. We're powerful because of that. And if that's taken away, then you have a sense of weakness. But it opens up. We have to eat that humble pie. And I think Americans the same way. This idea, and again, this is very much a Trump thing, right? I mean, it's not just America first for Americans. It's also America is top dog, and we're tough. And I say something, the rest of the world trembles. That is not healthy, and it's actually not very humane. So we have to be more humane. In fact, if we could only be humane as a species, we wouldn't have this. We would be talking about something else.
Well, it gets at me a little bit because there's these different mythologies. Actually, before I say what I'm going to say, I do want to introduce, I just noticed somebody walked into the back door here. Alex Krainer. How you doing, Alex?
Hi, I'm doing great, and my apologies for being this late. For some reason, I put this on my calendar at 7 p.m. and not 5 p.m. So had you not emailed me, I'd be off doing my jogging and running somewhere.
I'm glad I got you before you put on your jogging shoes. That's okay, good. Well,
Karen Kwiatkowski, pleasure to meet you. Thank you. This is the first time I'm with you on anything, but it's a great honor.
Oh, to meet. That's what I was going to say to you. I was so excited to hear that you were going to be on. I wanted to hear your thoughts because I've admired you for both of you guys for such a long time. It's a great honor to be here.
I'm super stoked that I'm the one who gets to broker this friendship in live time. This is fantastic. Well, based on some of what Karen had just said, I just want to share some thoughts that emerged, which frustrate me because there's this idea that, or there's 2 ideas that are really promulgated in our school system, in our culture, which is number one, that economies improve because of war. That the Great Depression ended because of World War II, that the Vietnam War was something which got us out of the recessions of the late 50s. And at the end of the day, it's like there is a certain degree of increased productivity that goes with the idea of a mission of getting something done that often is part of war. But at the same time, you're killing your customers. You're building products that are designed to blow up. You're just demoralizing whole generations who are seeing people, their friends and loved ones coming back. It's destroying the culture. So you're actually undoing the foundation upon which an economy can even exist, let alone a nation can live with neighbors that don't feel resentment that they've been bombed to the Stone Age. So that's a big mythology that we have to overcome. Your idea of, as well, learning how to take the rules of how we behave as people in a family, in a neighborhood, and apply it to the big scale of the family of nations, the community of the world. That's something that for some reason we've been intellectually blocked doing. And instead we have this neurotic, sick Freudian projection, which posits this completely unproven assumption that if we don't stay on top and keep the other people down, keep our rivals down, they will get big, get powerful, and do it to us. So you've got this weird Hobbesian doctrine, which has just kind of latched on like a parasite for centuries in human thought, which always gets us into trouble. So that's like just a frustration that awoke as I heard you speak. But Alex, now that you're on as well, I got a question because we've been dovetailing around the question of, well, Donald Trump, the foreign policy of the United States, there's definitely some enigmatic properties around Trump, and we certainly have a lot of hope that the messaging to create peace is something that has substance and meaning. I mean, we have as well a call with Putin that happened last week, just a few days ago. Trump got on the phone, spoke with Xi Jinping. There's going to be a meeting with delegates from the U.S. and Chinese side. Don't know what's going to be discussed, but that's going to be tomorrow. So there's like points of hope, dialogue being forced onto the Ukraine versus Russian sides as well. First dialogue of this type since 2022. So hopeful points. But then there's also this what appears to be evidence of sabotage, right? What did Trump know or not know pertaining to this onslaught of terrorist activities that Kiev launched against Russia, hitting military and civilian targets? What about this increased interest of expanding Palantir's powers both in providing support to Israel, but also to the Golden Dome and other things that involve, security, surveillance state dragnets on America? So there's this dual aspect of Trump and what's around him. And I'm curious to get your thoughts. What do you see right now as Trump's orientation? Do you think he's really authentically moving towards a peace process and pulling out the Gordian knots that have been getting us into this existential crisis? Or is there a disgenuity behind some of that messaging?
I tend to lean towards the optimistic interpretation, and you see, I read the same information as everybody else. So what we're talking about are impressions and interpretations of all that information, and we all see the same stuff, but then based on what assumptions you make, you might reach a completely different conclusion from the same information. So there's a lot of analysts out there that I deeply respect who reach different conclusions than I do. So just to explain quickly why I lean in the direction where I think that Trump is serious and that he's moving the country in the right way, even though obviously it was never going to be a smooth sailing. First of all, he has been for a very long time inclined in a certain way, and he's been consistent about this. 1776, returning the United States to its republican roots, reindustrializing the United States. He himself saying, I want to make the United States industrial superpower of the world again. Marco Rubio in January saying that they regard the post-World War II global order as more than obsolete, and moreover that they see it as that it has been weaponized against the United States. His general attitude towards the British and the Europeans. The fact that in February, when the British co-sponsored a resolution that would declare Russia an aggressor in Ukraine, that the United States voted together with Russia and Belarus, and so that's not a small thing. That's a very big thing. The fact that he withdrew the security guarantee from Ukraine, a huge deal. The fact that he has so far avoided war with Iran, a huge deal. So to me, he's failing on several, let's call it, minor fronts. One of them is just his general approach and demeanor. I think that he's reckless with his words. He often speaks before he thought about things and checked. His style I never particularly like. It's always borderline vulgar. And I think that he also makes an error of overestimating his own ability to control things. He approaches a lot of these crises as in like, all right, now I'm going to swagger in and I'm going to fix everything and everybody's going to come and kiss my ass, as he says. Well, the world has moved on. It's not like that anymore. So you have to kind of try some humble pie and a different approach to solving problems. But I think that on the really, really big, important issues, he's been generally doing the right things. And then we also have to recognize that the media generally are trying. Okay, yeah, and another two reasons why I'm generally positively inclined towards Trump is because Vladimir Putin agrees with me on this, and the British and European press agree with me on this, because they just can't get enough of venting hatred for Trump. It's just 24/7 all the time, every story in one way or another, sometimes less subtle, sometimes more subtle, but they're hurling mud at him nonstop. So they hate him. So it's true hate.
Okay, right. I do see that, and I'm curious to get also your thoughts pertaining to what do you think might be the most hopeful outcome, or the expected outcome with the discussions. I think you have Howard Lutnick, Scott Bessant, who are going to be heading off to London tomorrow to meet with their Chinese counterparts as the outcome of the conversation that Trump had with Xi Jinping, which appears to have been dealing with, and I think we might have lost Alex there. I see that smile's been pretty consistent for the past few seconds, so we might have lost Alex. That's okay. Can you hear me, Karen?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. I guess if Alex isn't there, but what do you think, Karen? I don't know if that's something you've given any thought to pertaining to the U.S.-China rupture and the hopeful reopening of lines of trust building that could maybe undo some of the tension militarily built up around China's perimeter in the Pacific and the NATO expansion into China's backyard. Do you think that there's any efforts there that hold any hope, or are you a little more pessimistic than Alex on that?
Well, I mean, if they're talking is good, because people form relationships and they can assess each other, and trust can be developed between the individuals. And I think, that's important. So yeah, it's got to be positive. And plus, our economic relationship with China is very disconnected from what Trump likes to say, I think, in a lot of ways. This country is very dependent on Chinese products, Chinese technology, Chinese everything. And it's not a bad thing. And some of the things Trump has said about China is very bombastic and very much not researched, very similar to what Alex was saying about, how he goes off not fully informed, and he says things that, his enemies say, oh, Trump's lying, and his allies say, oh, well, he's just misinformed. But either way, he says things that are not true, and often he'll have to back away from those or resolve those. So I think anytime we're talking is good.
Mm-hmm. On that note of some of the kabuki theater and inconsistencies in messaging, some people say it's kayfabe, a technique that's been developed in wrestling, where good guys become bad guys become good guys, and it just keeps everybody off balance. I don't know if that's a good thing, frankly, but I do think that some elements of wrestling are applied to the Trump modus of communications, possibly. I'm open to that. There's definitely a lot of kabuki theater, and one thing I had in mind as a question was the idea of the Elon versus Trump split. That's like, everybody's talking about that this week. Elon's even like, we know the story, right? Like, he's just come out saying that he's going to launch a new political party, feasibly called the America Party. Trump has said he's going to cancel Elon's government contracts. Elon's put out stuff saying that Trump is on the Epstein files. Again, partly smells like theater, but maybe not. Like, maybe there's some element of substance behind this conflict. What do you guys think about this thing? What's your take, Karen first? Or no. I see Alex is jumping out of his skin. Okay, yeah, Alex, go.
No. It's okay. I can wait.
No. You okay? Whoever. I'm the Canadian one. I'm supposed to be overly polite.
Now I want to hear from Alex on that, because he was frozen for a minute. Now he's not frozen.
Well,
this is good.
Yeah.
I don't know what happened. My computer just went completely dead. All right. So, let's go back to 1999 when Vladimir Putin became first the acting prime minister, I think, and then president in March of 2000. For a long while, for about 2 years, maybe a bit more, maybe a bit less, it appeared that Vladimir Putin was just another puppet of the ruling oligarchy in Russia, which was known at the time as Sembankirshchina, the rule of the seven bankers. And they together with their Western handlers, I know that Henry Kissinger was involved, and the MI6 was involved. Sir Richard Dearlove, who was at the time the head of the MI6, they had a hand in bringing Vladimir Putin to power. So for a long time, it did seem that he was their player. And 2 weeks before his election in March of 2000, Tony Blair came to St. Petersburg, and they went together to a theater performance. And this was publicized very, very widely, and it was perceived as Britain helping out Vladimir Putin win the elections in Russia. And then when he did win the election, then the romance between, the honeymoon between Great Britain and Russia was going on for about 2 years. And in those 2 years, Tony Blair visited with Vladimir Putin 9 times. And it wasn't until Vladimir Putin lined up Russia's oligarchs, who were all trustees for Western financial interests, lined them up and set the rules and told them, you're going to stay out of politics. And then after some legal battles, finally in 2003, he slammed one of them, the wealthiest one of them, who was the trustee for Jacob Rothschild's interests in prison, that the West realized, this guy's not our puppet. This is somebody else. And then, Sir Richard Dearlove eventually expressed regret for helping Vladimir Putin to power. Now, why did it take 2 years? Why did it seem for 2 years that Vladimir Putin was their puppet? I don't know exactly the answer, but I assume that it took time for him to solidify his background, to make sure that he cannot be taken down easily before he went to battle against the oligarchs and Western interests. So I think that even in Vladimir Putin's government, which today is the school book case of transparency, and when they say we're going to do this, they do this. When they say we're not going to do this, they don't do that. But at first, it was touch and go. It was a kabuki theater, because there was a lot of vested interest permeating Russian structures of power that would have turned against Putin straight away had he shown his cards straight away. And so I think, based on that story, we could assume that, after decades and decades and decades of penetration, infiltration, co-optation of, I think I just invented a word, co-opting of the U.S. power structures, that U.S. government is chock full, rife of people who will wish to sabotage Donald Trump, set traps for him. And so maybe in this phase, the kabuki theater is necessary as part of the game.
Interesting approach, as always expected. Thank you, Alex. Karen, what do you think about what Alex just said, or what's your take on the Alex on the Trump Elon split?
Yeah, well, I definitely agree with what Alex is saying there. That is that maps out what Putin did very smart, and Trump has this first term experience of how he was effectively sabotaged, and so we have seen some things he's done differently, and as far as the Elon Musk, yes, that looks it's very dramatic. It's funny that Trump said we're going to cut all of Musk's contracts, because the Defense Department and the Ukraine war are not going to function very well without some of these contracts, in particular Starlink, but not just Starlink. Our idea of a space force, what U.S. capability is there to conduct space operations without Elon Musk? There's none. So, that's a, silly thing that he would say. And it's very, very eye-catching, very good for the media that hates Trump. But, I think if you look at what Trump has done and what he's happening right now, he's gone through he fired Mike Waltz. And when he fired Mike Waltz, that was very interesting, because Mike had just hired a number of pro-Israeli, Zionist-oriented folks into the NSC, including Mayor of Saran, who I was interested in following. I thought, oh, this is so terrible. Then he fires Mike Waltz and he puts him in the UN, which we know Trump has zero respect for, although as a function, he's willing to use it. And it's disappointing how he's using it, but he sees it only as a tool. He does not see it as his tool, not a tool of international peace or prosperity. So he puts Waltz there. So he can't be accused of firing him necessarily. I mean, isn't that a plum position? But really, in Trump's world, it is nothing. It is throwing him to the curb, and that's great. But now we're seeing the purge, a continued, I shouldn't say purge, but a reduction in the size of the National Security Council. And the folks that they're getting rid of are folks like Mar of Saran. That's good. But there's others that we don't know as well by name or by history, who really have infiltrated our foreign policy and our national security circle. And they've done so with a very specific goal. It's a neoconservative goal. It is a pro-Israel goal. And I say pro-Israel. It's not good for Israel to be at war constantly. It's not good for Israel to lose its national or its global reputation and to have so many enemies that it's created globally because of its behavior. That's not good for Israel. But for the Israeli policymakers, I don't think they've really embraced that yet. They don't really see that. So using the United States to arm Israel, using the United States to promote wars and conflict abroad, if we get rid of the people who are whispering in the ears of our policymakers, and we also spread the word that other folks like that are not welcome here in our decision making, that's a very powerful thing, and it's also a dangerous thing. So Trump's moving in that direction, which I see as dangerous, and I do worry about him a little bit, but I think Vance is his secret weapon. If Trump has if he passes because he's very elderly and lives a high stress lifestyle, if he's gone, the people who want him gone the most are faced with the Vance presidency, which I don't think they really want that. So in that regard, I think Trump is very strategic, and he's been very strategic in how he has positioned himself, and some of the games that he plays are almost like you said with the wrestling, and designed to throw off the opponents, to occupy them on something that's less important while he continues to reshape the chessboard. And I mean the Washington, D.C. chessboard, not so much the global chessboard, but dealing with our own problems, which again is consistent with putting America first, I think.
Well, on that note, let me ask you guys this, because it's been on my mind heavily. The fact that Vance appears to have been brought in through the Peter Thiel outfits, from his days in Yale to getting his money running for the Senate that broke all records. I think $15 million from Thiel's operations. And then I look at Palantir and Uril and the broader operations that Palantir has as part of carrying out the wars in Gaza. Alex Karp definitely has said some very immoral things pertaining to his view of what should be done to continue the extermination process of the Gazans. Mm-hmm. And then you got things like the Big Beautiful Bill, which has certain very uncomfortable elements within it, like the calling out for a Palantir managed CIA sort of backed surveillance apparatus to provide for profiling of every citizen in the United States. Do you guys think that this thing is tied to something patriotic at all? Or do you think that this is something problematic that Trump has to deal with because that's looking at the JD Vance connection to this apparatus, and just seeing it grow out of the in-QTEL operations that the CIA ran in the 90s that seem to have set up Palantir to replace the total information awareness operation of Poindexter back in 2003 that got rejected by the people. But it seems like Palantir just sort of carried out those things under a private garb that were not being accepted by the state when it was being done by the state, at least. So how do you guys think about that element within the Trump entourage? Is it possibly a tool for the good that can be reined in or used positively, or something that has to be dealt with by patriots?
Well, I'm very concerned about it. Very concerned about that. That is that Peter Thiel connection and Palantir and that with JD Vance is very, very concerning to me. So I don't see I don't see a positive for that unless Trump is in a fantasy that he can put some of these powers in a company box of some sort, like a little lock box, much like, they don't exist, but let's say he has an idea that if he puts it in a lockbox, he can then control that. Either way, I don't know that. I'm very concerned about that.
Cool. Yeah, me too. Alex, what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm a bit agnostic because I'm just simply not sure what it all means, and both Elon Musk and Peter Thiel are mysterious to me. I can't make up my mind whether I think they're bad guys or are they potentially good guys. Peter Thiel in particular strikes me as I try to find some information about him, and again, I see what everybody else sees, but I listened also to some of his interviews, and I find it very strange that he's a very studious reader of scriptures, and I wonder why that is. And then the way he speaks about it, it doesn't make it obvious that he's on the satanic side, that he's reading them because he has very dark motivations. It strikes me as his whole disposition strikes me as genuine and not evil. And then you bring this Alex Karp guy, who is the CEO of his company, and that is a complete contrast. Somebody with absolutely no moral compass, or if anything, like the inverted moral compass. And so I don't know how to read into that. I just, sometimes these things surprise us because, had you met Edward Snowden before 2013, he would have come across as a typical contractor from the military-industrial complex working on very nefarious things. But then they also put him in a position to actually render a very important service to humanity, which he wouldn't have been able to render otherwise. And then you could say the same about Bill Binney and John Kiriakou and a number of these people. So, sometimes salvation comes from from the dark side, and I'd hate to prejudice them unless they've proven themselves as bad players. Now, everything that's being said about Palantir sounds horribly concerning, but then I also try to be careful about psyops, because a lot of what we find out through the media, and also the people who are running the psyops they're not naive. They're not just like going to CNN and BBC. They're also deploy all these contractors that run Twitter and Facebook and whatever farms that keep pushing stuff into the information space. So I'm very, very careful about what I believe or disbelieve. To give you a specific example, when the attack happened on last Sunday on the Russian nuclear bombers, one of the first things that came through the CNN was that oh, Pete Hegseth was watching it in real time. Well, really, was it? Are we now believing what CNN reports? I don't know. To me, at best, it's a 50-50 thing. Either it is true or it isn't true. But considering that it came through CNN, I think it's more likely that it's not true than it is true. But you can see why they would throw that in there, because one of the things that they're desperate to achieve is to derail the improvement in the relationship between Russia and the United States. In the same way, when it comes to these Peter Thiels and Elon Musks and Palantirs and Space Forces and all of these things, one of the things that they want to achieve is for Trump to lose public support and for the people to turn away from Trump. Yeah. So for all those reasons, I want to be very careful about what I really believe. At any rate, this is important to keep in mind. Whatever control matrix they put together, until and unless it goes under our skin with the digital chips, we can always opt out. We always have the option of opting out. You can always set your device aside and go about your business as like it's 1999, right? Until it's under your skin, you have the options. So, until they start forcing people to put it under our skin, I have to at least partly remain agnostic about all these things.
That's appreciated. I would just throw in I'll be the typical like counterbalanced, cynically oriented person on this point. There was a really useful essay that I read by Peter Thiel that he wrote in 2007 called "The Straussian Moment," and it's super insightful because within it, it's an extended essay. He clearly self-identifies as a Straussian himself. Part of, I think it was Richard Pearl, I believe, who was his early sponsor when he was still at Stanford running the Libertarian Review in the 80s. He was working with, but anyway, he self-identifies as a follower of Leo Strauss and also Rene Girard, but especially Strauss. And he cogently gets across the sort of this tradition that Strauss was himself a part of, that had this sort of esoteric teaching structure going back to the Gnostics all the way through Hobbes himself, that he talks about having this dual teaching for the initiates and for the non-initiates. And Strauss was somebody who was known as the godfather of the neocons, right? Who saw a use behavior from the standpoint of a behaviorist way of thinking about Christianity and traditional values, not because Strauss himself believed in Christianity, but simply that he saw value in being able to have a predictive power over modifying people's behavior when they have faith in something that is codified as it is in the Bible. And this is the guy who then gave rise to, all of those neocons like Dick Cheney and others who then took over under Zbigniew. So when I see writings like that with Thiel doing, self-identifying with that current that I know exists, I get goosebumps, and I'm not happy about that. But I could be wrong, and maybe he's totally a legit, person who's really trying to make the most and understand what's going on and make them, contribute something good to the process. Maybe.
Just a question: what was the name again of this essay, and when did he publish it?
The Straussian Moment, published in 2007, and I think it was it went into the manifesto for these EDGE conferences that Elon Musk and others participated in with the behaviorists that were taking over with the Obama administration from 2008 to 2011, where you had Silicon Valley gurus and behaviorists sort of getting workshopped. So I think that was sort of setting the tempo for that EDGE conference series, I believe. But it's a really worthwhile thing to read.
The reason why I asked, because 2007 was a millennium ago, and to me the 2020 is kind of like a watershed moment, because I think that a lot of people who, even within the system, who believed in the system, have had their faith shaken up very violently from 2020 on. You know what I'm talking about.
Mm.
And the man was 15 years younger, and he maybe was garnishing his CV. I don't know, but at any rate, I appreciate. I will look at the document. Incidentally, another name when you mentioned Rumsfeld and Cheney and Louis Scooter Libby. One very mysterious name that appears related to all of them, and he mentored and helped their careers. Strife was the ideologue, but the operator was a name named Andrew Marshall, who I think is still alive. Andrew Marshall is like the grise eminence of the U.S. defense establishment, going back, I think, to the 1960s.
Yeah, that's true.
I did not know about him. That's
I didn't either until just a few days ago. I watched an interview in Croatian by some Croatian academic, and he was Andrew Marshall this and Andrew Marshall that, and I was like, what is this?
He was he had an office in the Pentagon for, I don't know, 50 years or something, and he was there, and he was the big strategic thinker, the thought guy. I thought he passed a few years ago, but I thought so. I can't guarantee it. I don't know, but he was very elderly, and he was still working long past what you would consider a normal working life. He was still in the Pentagon and doing his putting things together. I mean, a strategist, and greatly respected, and in that, well, by the state certainly. And it would be nice to think that maybe that era has ended or is ending. And certainly, when you mentioned the 1920s, the 2020, that year, the COVID, the way the government behaved and the way it lied so obviously to a population, a global population, which is a new generation that doesn't remember 9/11, and they don't remember how that event was utilized by states to shape a whole population's view of the necessity of wars that were desired by the state. It's a different people now, and so. But the older ones who remember 9/11 and maybe remember a number of other operations of propaganda, not to say that 9/11 didn't happen, but how it was utilized, and many of us have seen that. And then when we saw COVID, I think we reacted a certain way, and our children or our grandchildren also, since, I think we're learning more rapidly, maybe about how these lies work. And just like when it comes down to an individual, nobody likes to be lied to. And we resent that, and we don't like hypocrisy. And they said even dogs recognize hypocrisy. So it's something that we are very sensitive to, and we're seeing that. So I think that the cycle of government lies leading to war may be shortening, and maybe we're able to intercept it in some ways. We're able to stop it, wake up a little bit. I'm not saying humanity's been around for ages, and we haven't really improved very much. But somehow the technology and the imagery, the way we like to take in data, is helping us. And I think this is what we've certainly seen with Gaza. It hasn't helped the Gazans very much, but I think the international awareness of the brutality of a particular state and its primary sponsor, which is our government, is very much. I don't think that will. I mean, what we have learned about how governments will operate and how much contempt they have for human life, the whole planet has learned that at the same time very rapidly. And those who suspected it or already learned it before, we are rock solid, but our children and grandchildren are also rock solid. So that's something new and different. I don't think we've seen that. It's a good thing. I mean, it's not a happy thing, but the fact that maybe we're becoming more critical is a good thing.
I think that one of the extremely important things that dropped away in 2020 or in the aftermath of the 2020 is that a lot of people who maybe saw problems and understood that there are conspiracies, and that there are certain deceptions. But I remember that many of them continued to cling to the faith in the system, and they could always find a way to, they could contrive like a benevolent interpretation. Yeah, okay, maybe this is wrong, but maybe the people who are in charge are doing it for this good reason, and I think that dropped away in 2020, because I think that what people saw and experienced there is no benevolent explanation to that. And then you realize that we are face to face with something that is so profoundly evil, and that has such tremendous power over the system, that then the whole system is in doubt. And I think that then you have people jumping ship in their millions and maybe hundreds of millions, and they're thinking, okay, well, we need to reform this, or we need to overhaul it completely, because otherwise, we are on the road of the Western Roman Empire, total perdition. Yeah. And I think that at a certain level, even certain members of these billionaire elites come to the same conclusion, because, just to take the example of somebody like Elon Musk, if we are all turned into hackable animals, penned into 15-minute cities, what's the use of electric cars? What's the use of spaceships?
That's right.
Even their massive investments are now rendered useless. What's the point if we're going to go to clay pots and dirt floors in our houses, like we had in the 6th and 7th century wreckage of the Roman Empire. Mm-hmm. So they themselves become interested in reforming the system, because they see that the way these certain completely depraved, inbred degenerates of the elites are leading the charge is completely unacceptable.
Yeah, which gets at what we were toying with earlier, that killing your customers is bad for business at the end of the day, and very few people come to that realization in time. So hopefully we're at one of these enlightenment moments where certain people with influence have realized that war is actually not great for business, and bringing in a dark age will actually not be good for business prospects. So good points. Karen, did you have a thought on that before we go?
The first thing in marketing 101 is never kill a customer.
Yeah. No, I was thinking when Alex was saying that, think about Zuckerberg's, some of his recent podcast appearances. I don't know which one it was, but he's coming across, he's trying to come across, and some of the things that he's saying are actually you can identify with. I mean, he's saying, maybe it's too big, and and they question him about his bunker, because, we hear about these billionaire bunkers, so they can ride out the next thing. But, and he kind of denied that, but he came across as a very human person who was a little mystified himself, even at where things were going. And so I think that even the elites, maybe to some extent, are questioning. But, I live out here about 2 hours from DC. So we get a lot of people that come from DC, come from government. We have tons of government workers and retirees out here. And many of them are very much pro the state, and very much, we're a Trump county, but there are a lot of those who don't like Trump, seriously don't like Trump. I mean, they are afflicted with the complete TDS, and it's very obvious. And we have neighbors, that are like that. But we're friends with them. We can talk with them, but one of my friends says, well, I can't talk to so-and-so anymore because she's just such a hypocrite on Trump. And yet, when you think about it, this same woman, all of us really, who live within a mile of each other, all have gardens, all stock up food for, for bad weather, or let's just call it bad weather. All of us are interested in maintaining a network of friends and allies. All of us stay informed with what's happening in the world. We are all protecting our interests, even though some like Trump, some are agnostic on Trump, and some absolutely are putting out things like 86 Trump. And I think that's what caused the problem. She has a Facebook page. She talks about love, and love is love, and all these good things. And I want peace and love, and I wish all things good. And then she made a little 8647 thing that she also shared in the same thread. So, the self-awareness is not there, but, the interest of preserving and thinking about how do I take care of myself and my loved ones? How do I keep my little tiny corner of the world as peaceful and productive as I can, regardless of the philosophies or the economic views. Many people are doing the same kind of thing. And when Alex, you said the end of empire, when the Roman Empire ended, the thing that told everybody that it was happening without telling them was that people stopped identifying as Roman citizens. They just simply said, I'm so-and-so, I'm this, I'm that, I'm from there, I'm not a Roman citizen. And they basically turned away. It's almost a psychological and physical turning your back on the empire. And I think here in America, we have lots of space. We're blessed with a great country with lots of space and a lot of wealth amongst our people. Even though our middle class is shrinking, our poorest people are probably have more potential to spend money and have what they need than most poor people around the planet. There's no doubt about that. And all of those people are turning away from Washington. This is the Trump phenomenon. What did he run on? He said, I'm not like them. I'm going to be different. Now, of course, many of us that believe that or may have believed that, and now we're not happy. But he ran on something that is very appealing to a great many people, that we're turning away from this empire. And that has power. You can't really measure it, but it has huge, huge, huge power. And I think we have to embrace that even more and make that okay, to ignore the state, understand that every word out of its mouth is probably a lie aimed at manipulating us, and turn away from it in as many ways that we can.
I'd like to shift gears to a few questions from the live audience that I've been accumulating before we round it out. And I figured maybe 30 more minutes. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, cool. All right, sweet. So the first question that I noticed came from Carlos Gonzalez, who asked, if you look at cycles of monumental shifts similar to changes in monetary systems, is that the cycle that we are in? War is usually a prequel to these shifts. So, I don't know, Alex, maybe first, do you have any thoughts about Carlos's way of thinking or framing his question? Or
okay, so I'm going to make an assumption that I understand what he's asking, because
right.
I could interpret his question in more than one way. I think that actually the shift that we're we're not in the middle of it, we're at the beginning of it. This shift is, I think, a lot more monumental than maybe the previous shifts, from the in agricultural revolution and then industrial revolution, and then abolition of slavery. A lot of these things were happening within a certain system, which is it was all in Western primacy, all with this within the continuity of evolution of the same banking system, same monetary system that we have today. And that one went along with a certain intellectual tradition that set the ideological framework for where we are. Certain beliefs about money, beliefs about liberty, individualism, about economics, about history, and so on. All of these things are coming to a head. And I at a certain point, I didn't really know how to convey this. So I used the metaphor of a chicken feedlot, and I said, imagine if, we have been living within the same matrix for generations, and we've been educated in this same matrix for generations. And so we have very strong opinion about the layout of this matrix. And then we differ about whether, the farmer is the good guy or the bad guy. Some people say hey, they're slaughtering us and they're keeping us here in prison. Other people say how can you say that they're bringing us food and medicines and they're taking care of us? Isn't that obvious? And then we have, whether lights should come on sooner or later, or should be light or darker, or if the food should flow from left to right or right to left. But we have no concept of living outside of this matrix. And so when I wrote this article, I also tried to convey the point by showing the photographs of chickens from the feedlot, which are these miserable, wretched things with only half their body covered with feathers, and they're all. And then you show them the chickens from wildlife, and they're this beautiful, majestic God's creation. They're still chickens, but they're just beautiful. They have this beautiful plumage, and it's shiny, and they're healthy, and they're, it's like a beautiful creature, like a beautiful God's creature. And so I think that, once we break out of this matrix, we can't really tell what the changes are going to be. But I kind of intuitively expect that we're going to be moving from these wretched creatures to something quite majestic, like God creation in its full majesty. And we can't quite conceive of what this might look like, but I think that we can intuit it because we know that we are better than this. Like when you put a strawberry in your mouth, what a strawberry should taste like, or a tomato. That you're capable of joy of living, because when you look at your children, you see that they're full of it. Somehow it dies away. Somehow it's beat out of us. And I think that, maybe this is a change that had to come. Maybe this is some kind of a chrysalis moment for humanity. We've spent 5 or 6 centuries inside of the cocoon, and now we have to get out. And this process is very, how do you call it? It carries a certain degree of anxiety, because we're moving into something that we don't know what it is yet. But we have to fall back on faith, because we're meant to be here. We belong here. We're meant to be here. Whatever has been happening in that cocoon has to recede in the past, and we have to fully embrace what's coming with faith and without fear. And so, Carlos, that's the best answer I can give to your question, because I see the transition as more than just another same old cycle of history that's just going from repackaging the same old things. I think that we're going into a different new thing. Anyway, I stopped there.
I love your optimism, Alex. That's great. Karen, wait, do you have any thoughts?
No, I'm inspired by that, because it makes a ton of sense. And I'm gonna go find that article that you wrote to understand it even better. But I think that is right. And the only thing I would add is, when we look at the United States and probably Europe to some extent, but the financialization of economy, of the global economy, but certainly the American economy, this whole disconnection from work and productivity to the money system, and we have this unimaginable debt. And, people legitimately are talking about, debt jubilees, which, been around forever. But there's all kinds of solutions that people want to fix the money. And I think that's still in the chicken house. That's still inside of the framework that we are used to. But I do think that the chickens are getting ready to escape. I think there's some holes, and there's some access points already where we're seeing glimpses of what's possible. And maybe to some extent, we talk about the electronic money, or all different ways of cooperating with each other and trading value. I think the people themselves are figuring out ways that states are way behind in. The farmer looks at those half-feathered chickens, and trust me, I live 1,000 yards from a chicken house that is exactly like what you're describing. And those poor birds, but the farmer is very proud of his birds, and he says, well, so many of, my survival rate is very high from chick to broiler. I'm doing really well. But I think that interpretation is declining. What's happening is the chickens themselves are escaping little by little, things that we're going to get outside of that matrix. But the financialization of our economy is a sign of the end. And I'm not saying that means they won't have war to accelerate their control or consolidate, but our economy is not connected to humanity anymore. It didn't seem like, and it has to be, it must be. And so that's going to get corrected.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really the ultimate moral question is, can we connect the question of value with the sacredness of human life and our broader destiny as a species that has a lot of similarities on a material level to other species that exist in the biosphere, but we have these additional attributes which we don't see amongst the wolves and the monkeys and other things, which touches upon what Alex was also getting at. And I like both of your combined metaphors of the chickens have escaped and the butterfly metaphor too, this transformative aspect that human beings have been sort of, maybe you could say, incubating on the earth, but there's like this need for a moral, psychophysical transformation for us to become a mature species. Like I once read this essay by Kraft Erica, a rocket scientist, some years back, and he had this great thought of the relationship of the human species to the universe as a whole. And he had this theory that we've been sort of like in the womb, sort of gestating on the earth, where things are kind of very easy for us. Oxygen is breathable as soon as we're born, and there's food growing in the biosphere right to be plucked. And so it's relatively easy to exist. But since John F. Kennedy especially began challenging us to go beyond our limits and explore the broader unknown, and start reframing our idea of what our ecosystem is, to not simply the limits of a closed system, but rather the open system potentiality, the entirety of our solar system and the universe. It challenges a completely new sort of set of responsibilities and identity, because now you can't just go into space or to another planet, expect to have oxygen or a biosphere. People have to think all of a sudden multi-generationally about replicating the understanding, I guess, if you're going to do it well, you have to understand what are those laws of nature, so that you could then begin to use and apply that knowledge in a way that allows for terraforming slowly over generations, and the recreation of biospheric dynamics outside of this very comfortable environment, which again requires that we think much more creatively, much more dynamically. We can't be comfortable in a particular modality at any given moment for too long, or else we will become susceptible to failure, which will mean mass death if we allow that. So I like that idea of a mature species qualitatively transforming as we mature, which hopefully this crisis is sort of pushing us towards. My concern, as well as a little bit on the other side, is that would require a high degree of cultural moral development. And when I just sort of, this is what caused me to go get a little again cynical, because I'm like, I look at the cultural mediocrity that's been rampant over the past 60 years of CIA funded art, movies, literature that's normalized mediocrity. It causes me to be weary on whether or not we have that type of cultural I guess qualifications to embrace that higher matured identity. I hope we do. And again, I really hope this crisis forces us to learn how to fly and stop thinking that we have to just hang on to the branch forever, but really take the leap. I hope so. But yeah, I'll just say one thing.
Matthew, just a quick interjection. The equation has changed, because the internet really is a new variable, completely new. It's never been there before. So, whatever they've done with the arts before, and with all kinds of other brainwash and social, what they call strategic communications, is not going to play out the same way. It just can't, because the fact that we can have these kinds of conversations and interactions one-on-one in real time,
that's true,
in social media, that can't not have impact, because compare this to depending on radio, television, magazines, newspapers, it's radically different.
That's true. Good point. Gerald has a two-part question observation that I think might be a good way to end this. His deals with the British, and I know, Alex, you've written quite extensively about British shenanigans behind the scenes that are often underappreciated by geopolitical analysts. Gerald also pays attention to this, and he just wrote saying, Russia's ambassador to the UK has suggested London was involved in a Ukrainian drone attack on Vladimir Putin's warplanes. I guess airplanes, I guess he meant. Or no, warplanes. Andrei Kellen said Ukraine must have had outside help with the strikes. He also wrote that emails and internal documents reviewed by the Gray Zone reveal detail of a cabal of British military British military and intelligence veterans plotting to escalate and prolong the Ukraine proxy war at all costs. I read that Gray Zone article. I think that also refers to Project Alchemy.
That is Project Alchemy, yes.
Yeah.
That is Project Alchemy.
Right. So again, what would you say to the question of like the exposure of the British hand behind a lot of these arsonists, like these arson operations that are potentially pushing us towards full war? Do you think that it's coming out fast enough? Do you think Putin and the forces that matter understand this enough that they can deal with the British intelligence part of things?
I think it's coming out very fast now. You know, a few years ago, you know, I've been always writing all roads lead to London, and I would be getting blank stares, you know, and people were in disbelief, and they said like, what? That obviously is the United States, you know, London is just a junior partner. Now it's becoming very obvious, and you know, I've been trying to learn as much about this as possible, and there's a lot of good sources about it, and there's a lot of information out there. And I will actually skip over the exact question to the conclusion that is kind of imposing itself. I'm not 100% clear on this, but it seems to me that if you quarantined this one source of poison that is affecting everything everywhere, that I think a lot of the problems that are observing in the world would just sort themselves out really easily, because it seems that everything draws from there. You know, wars in the Middle East, Syria, Lebanon, Yemen, Iran, Ukraine, this rabid psychotic Russophobia, radicalization of Muslim youth everywhere in the world, distorting the content of the textbooks that go to Muslim children in Britain, in France, in Gaza, in West Bank. It's all coming from London, and it's coming from the United States to the extent that they're copying the same methods and the same models and the same playbooks. Some of them are actually called the playbook from Britain. And British institutions like RICU, Research Information Communications Unit, set up under the British Home Office, they farm out their methods, which they say are, they themselves boast are the most advanced strategic communications methods in the world, and that they're boasting that they're running them at a scale and scope that is industrial. They set up units in the United States, in France, in Belgium, in all over the world. They themselves boast that they have units in more than 20 countries around the world. And, you know, they say, oh, the next flashpoint is the Balkans. And guess where they are? They're in Bosnia and Herzegovina, signing strategic cooperation, defense cooperation deals with Bosnia and Herzegovina, with Macedonia, now with Kazakhstan as of, you know, just the other day, you know, all kinds of surrounding this arc of crises that's been active and burning up for over a century of British geopolitics. So anyway, you know, if you quarantine this one center of power and disable it from influencing events around the world, I think a lot of this war making would just die down everywhere. That's my very strong impression. I'll revert because I'm in the middle of, you know, sorting my notes and research.
Sherry says, great idea, Alex, quarantine the city of London and then everything will settle down. Yeah. All right.
That's a practical, I mean, that is an idea that, you know, and that is how we solve problems. We say, well, where do we need to, where are the bubble points? Where is the vulnerability? Where's the mistake in our math? We look to see where that is, and then we resolve that. So I like the way you're thinking there. I think the evidence is clear. And that also means that we don't have to put up with it. If we can identify the problem, we can deal with the problem.
I got a twofold question from Matthew and Piano Man. Matthew, And they're both kind of connected. Matthew Thomas says, what role does China play in breaking out of the British matrix? And Piano Man writes, China is already working on making things better ahead as West continues reckless decisions, destroying things. Global South is busy building infrastructure, pulling poor countries from poverty. And yeah, I'm curious to get your thoughts before. I guess that'll be maybe the last question, because we are, I guess, running to the 1.5 hour mark here. What do you guys think about the both China's Belt and Road and approach to dealing with formulating a greater Eurasian partnership, a multipolar alliance, as they say, which we can also include Russia into that mix and other countries if you wish, the BRICS plus nations as a whole, and what that's given to Western patriots who wish to also find something to organize around as far as getting out of this Anglo, this cage, this Hobbesian cage we've been sort of trapped into for too many decades. What do you guys think about that?
Well,
I'll leave that one to Karen.
Okay. Well, obviously, I think the U.S. we haven't paid a lot of attention over the past 40 years or 50 of how China approaches their foreign policy and how they engage with the rest of the world. And when you look at how they do things, where they're doing it, what it looks like, what their cooperation looks like with other partners, what we see is a very good model, something that, I wrote a book actually when I was in the military on the African Crisis Response Initiative, which was a military way that we engaged with certain countries, allies, that we were going to create allies in the continent of Africa. Anyway, not a good program, had a lot of flaws, but I understood what our approach was. And that is diametrically opposed to the approach that China takes with all of its partners and potential partners. So there's a lot that we can learn that is really outside of the American, even the intellectual sector of, where we look at foreign policy. We really ignore and we missed a lot of what China was doing. And it's a great model. And it is a humane model, which is hard for, us anti-communists in the United States to go, oh, that can't be, but it is. And it's a very, there's a lot to be learned from it. But at this point, all we can pretty much do is respect it. I don't think the United States, I think the United States is contracting. And it's whether it's America first or whatever, but I think we're contracting. But the lessons, if we open our eyes and see, China certainly has been a wonderful example of how you might engage in order to influence and in order to kind of like trade benefits both parties. Their exchanges with these countries benefit both parties. And we talk like that in America, but we don't live like that. We don't operate like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to walk the walk, right? I mean, that's how to. There's always this question of how do you judge the authenticity or the intention of a person, and attention, authenticity are not something you could see empirically with your senses. You have to sort of figure it out by looking through the sight of reason, which involves looking to see, do somebody's actions, their behavior, and their words fall in sync or out of sync? And to the degree that we can bring our ideals and our actions into harmony, we got something going there. And so I think that's a great way of putting it. Alex, yes.
Yeah, just a quick question, because I see that Gerald Pechenyuk posted a message that he found Professor Boyle's filing with the World Court charging the British with responsibility for the war in Bosnia. And I don't know if I can interact with that message, but if I could have a link to that filing, I would very greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, Gerald, that's a challenge, Gerald. If you send me that by email, I think you have my email, or just put it in this chat box, I will make this a comment, or I'll put it in the description box of this video so other people, including Alex, can access it. And I'll give you Alex's email too.
And thank you, Gerald.
Yeah, we need more ammunition like this for the arsenal. So that's great. Guys, this was really edifying, and I really needed this taste of optimism. I do appreciate both of you guys for that enormously, and I'm so honored that both of you agreed to be on for this inaugural Pluralia Dialogos forum today, and I'm looking forward to our future interactions going forward. Both of your Substacks will be included in the description box of this video. I highly encourage everyone to subscribe to both Karen and Alex's Substacks, and just follow them generally as much as possible. The other thing is, for people who want to be notified about these roundtable sessions going forward, make sure you like and subscribe to this video on YouTube, and share it with your friends and colleagues. Get the word out so we can continuously build this live audience and grow this platform as much as humanly possible, because we definitely need ideas vectored around solutions, which is the whole point. At the end of the day, it's like let's take heart and assess all of the dark stuff in order to really be able to look for the pathway to navigate this minefield to a better future. So again, thank you guys for this, and thank you everyone for joining us today, and looking forward to speaking to everybody in 2 weeks, same channel, same time. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Do this 7 minutes a day until July. We start on Monday, June 9th. In a week, you'll feel better. In 2 weeks, you'll look better. In a month, your wife won't believe your results. Here's a personalized plan of short chair workouts tailored for beginners over 50. It's just 7 minutes a day, beginner friendly, and requires no equipment. You can work out anytime, anywhere. Just open the app and follow along.